Hi. I write fan fiction probably like a lot of you do. I think we've all probably had to go through the numerous amount of drastic fiction to find whatever we want if we are into IDW. But as someone who's been like working on my own continuity in the back of my mind, how have you guys taken characters like Megatron and Rodimus and take your own, you've made them your own, but they're still obviously Megatron, Rodimus, Ultra Magnus, etc. I noticed this particularly in More Than Meets the Eye with all the, it's mostly obscure background characters. Who the hell heard of Flame before that? But you've done a very good job in writing the ones that are known.
I think I've been lucky or fortunate in that writing the Transformers comics now, or in the last few years, there's been a little bit more creative leeway. There's been the sandpit within which you're playing has been a bit bigger, and that's probably because it's become like a multi-tiered franchise now, and there's different continuities, and some of them perhaps have more rigid rules than others, and the comics have been quite. We've been encouraged to sort of do new things, and that said, you've got to obviously be true to the core characters. If those characters don't or won't do the things that you need for the story to progress, then there's lots of others you can bring in. But I mean, Flint, you've written for Transformers in the 80s as well, as the IDW comics more
right recently, yeah.
Yeah. So was there a difference in externally? Was there a difference in how you were encouraged to write, or what?
Well, yeah. I mean, from the point of view of. Yeah, when I was doing it in the 80s, we were just making it up. You know what I mean? We had the first couple seasons, but I mean, we were making up everything. Nobody knew the word continuity in those days. Okay, it was like it's as I was saying, you have Dipstick and Tailpipe, and we just made up who they were and he did the best we could. Yeah, and then I opened I did have one brief foray two actually. For the first Michael Bay Transformer game, that most of what I did ended up on, not in the game, but because the game got stunted. But and then there was the stuff with Chris Metzen. And here's what was amazing about doing it with Metzen, okay, is Chris grew up on this stuff. He wasn't like me where he worked on. I'm like this old guy. Oh yeah, back in '85. I'm that guy. Chris grew up and internalized it, and he knew all of it better than I did. And I thought it was like good enough to, just I did that back. I thought that was good enough, and it wasn't. And he really kind of schooled me, and it made me sharp, and it made me get up and think about different iterations, which is not weird for me. That's what I do, but. And so it was really cool to see how a second generation who was totally tuned in on how everything happened, interpreted a first generation stuff, and now you're doing third generation work. That was a fascinating exercise. I had to totally reformulate the way I perceived the material. It was interesting.
I think you're seeing that now with these. There's an ever-increasing number of so-called evergreen brands, and there is sort of generational fandoms now, and Transformers isn't alone in being this long-running franchise where there's going to be sort of new waves of I don't want to say product, that's too new stories, new stories being told, and they will sort of either be entirely new, or more likely they'll be recombinations of stuff that's gone before, and it'll become less and less likely. For somebody to be working on it that has been completely isolated from it, that hitherto knew nothing about it. So it sort of seeps into the to the stories, I guess.
Yeah, and you can do anything you want with it now. I mean, I'm looking at human beings dressed up like like Transformers. I mean, an iteration where the Transformers became human. I didn't know that happened. It's brilliant. Steampunk human Transformers. Yeah, of course. People were not capable of having that idea in 1985. I mean, I'm serious. Between what games and fiction and genre, messing and medium that didn't even exist. I mean, there were thoughts we weren't really capable of having back then. Maybe, way back in the 40s, Lovecraft and Howard could have these ideas, but like real people couldn't have these ideas in the 80s. Now this is standard to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
and-
like, I mean, yeah, at the same time, you get something and you lose something. In the old rigor, when there was one canon and you can't violate that canon, you at least knew what your parameters were. Now, God knows what works. You just go out and do stuff. That's the real thing to all writing is you got to just go out and do it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And something that you think's a miserable failure right now turns out, look, I mean, understand the Transformer movie bombed, okay? It was perceived as a bomb at the time. But when I'm sitting here in a room 35 years later with people that know every line in the movie, I would say it had some impact. And so anything you write, and you may think this is crap now, or everybody in the world rejects it, this may be your lost work that, becomes a great American novel, or the great British novel. Later on, there we go. I mean, he got to get the cool accent. It's hard to see if he on the same stage with that, I mean, I sound like somebody who grew up here, which I did, but, whereas he's got the cool accent.